Chapter 2. Wei Wuxian groaned when he came to his senses. His head hurt. He was propped up against the trunk of a tree, a little to the side of a bustling street. What happened? Where was he? This did not look like the Forbidden City. He groaned again. Niuhai Song. Of course. Was it really necessary to drug him? Couldn't he have just covered his eyes or something? He felt like he had the worst hangover. When he made a move to stand up, Wei Wuxian felt something in the pocket of his robes. He took out a piece of paper attached to a small flask containing a tonic. Against the headache. Meet me here at midnight. Don't be late, was written on it in Niuhai Song's artistic writing. Maybe I should make use of today and go looking for new friends that have less inclinations towards excessive drama, he mumbled, tipped his head back, and swallowed the tonic. Still feeling a bit groggy, he stumbled out onto the busy street and promptly ran into a hurried-looking elderly man. Wei Wuxian stared after him as a man cursed at him and mumbled something about lazy drunks. How dare he disrespect Wei Wuxian like that? It took him another minute of bewildered staring at a man that had long vanished among the masses of people in the street to realize that this was actually happening. That man had no idea who he had just insulted. Wei Wuxian was outside of the palace, out of the Forbidden City. He was free, if only for a day. He had a full day to spend to his heart's desire. No obligations whatsoever. No duty. No image to uphold. No good example to set. Wei Wuxian almost jumped up and down in joy. Wei Wuxian had been strolling around the city all morning, looking at the goods for sale, chatting up the vendors, eager for gossip and recommendations about the best places to visit, and generally basking in the glory that was today. You've got to be kidding me! A very familiar, very angry voice hissed behind him. Shit, Wei Wuxian thought, but plastered his best smile on his face and turned around. Zhang Cheng, he greeted his cousin. How nice of you to drop by! Zhang Cheng grabbed his arm, anything but gently he might add, and pulled Wei Wuxian away from the public eye into a less crowded corner. What are you doing here? Zhang Cheng asked, a vein pulsing in his forehead. I'm enjoying this beautiful day, and you? Did you hear that there are celebrations in the Emperor's honor? Would be a shame to miss it, wouldn't it? Wei Wuxian answered with a blinding smile. Are you insane? Have you gone completely mad? You snuck out of the Forbidden City without telling anyone? Without so much as a guard for protection? Zhang Cheng's voice strained with suppressed rage. Are you actively trying to get yourself killed now? I did tell someone, Wei Wuxian answered nonchalantly. He pulled his arm free of Zhang Cheng's grip and started to wander back onto the street. Standing around this empty corner was not what he was here for today. Put off his stride, Zhang Cheng started following him, spluttering. You did? Who would be stupid enough? He paused and sighed. Niuhai Song! Why am I even asking? That bastard! I'm gonna get him banned from the Forbidden City for the rest of his life. I'll have his brother punish him until he's an old man. I can't believe the two of you would deliberately put you in danger like that. Oh, calm down, Ah-Cheng. Wei Wuxian picked up a bag of loquats from one of the vendors in passing, and Zhang Cheng quickly fumbled with his pouch to put some money in the seller's hand to pay for it. I can protect myself perfectly fine. You know that. Not even you can defeat me. You! Zhang Cheng protested, pointing his finger at his cousin. Wei Wuxian ignored Zhang Cheng and continued, and apart from that, none of these people would ever recognize me for who I am. Barely any of my closest advisors know what I look like, since they are not allowed to look at His Majesty the Emperor. So how could those people? I'm just here to have a good time. For once in your life, can you just not be a spoilsport who ruins this for me? You don't get it, do you? You're in danger out here. You are unprotected out here. Anyone can get to you, Zhang Cheng hissed. Well, come with me then, General Zhang. You're more than fit to protect me, Wei Wuxian suggested with a wink. Grumbling very creative curses under his breath, Zhang Cheng reluctantly followed his cousin through the crowd. Wei Wuxian thought he heard him grumble something sounding like, Father would kill me if I let anything happen to you, and grinned. Cheng, I'm getting hungry. How about we find ourselves something to eat? What do you say? Fine, Zhang Cheng replied. Oh, and while we're at it, Wei Wuxian remembered one of the vendors telling him about Emperor's Smile. He loved that name, and he desperately wanted to try it. I heard about this wonderful liquor that... No! No! No way! You're not making my job even harder by getting yourself drunk in some gutter. I won't take responsibility for that, Zhang Cheng decided. Fine, Wei Wuxian agreed, much to Zhang Cheng's surprise. Zhang Cheng wouldn't be around to take responsibility for it then. Let's watch the parade then. It took Wei Wuxian less than 5 minutes and a distracted second to shake off his cousin in the massive crowd that had gathered to watch the parade. It was a pity, though, because he'd actually been looking forward to watching this parade. But there was nothing to be done about it now. Losing Zhongcheng so he could finally get a taste of Emperor's smile was the priority. Once he had managed to put as much distance as possible between himself and his cousin, he continued to roam the city streets alone once more. He did not look forward to the lecture he'd have to endure from Zhongcheng once they'd meet again, but today was not a day Wei Wuxian would have obstructed by rules to follow and people trying to tell him what to do. Wei Wuxian was glad that he hadn't told Zhongcheng about the plans he had for the rest of the day, including the name of the liquor he was looking for. He wouldn't put it past his cousin to search every tavern that sold Emperor's Smile to find him, but search every tavern that sold any kind of liquor? That would take weeks, so he should be fairly safe. He strolled down the alley towards where a nice vendor had told him the Lotus Lake was, and a tavern that was both an insider's tip and one of the places that sold Emperor's Smile. When Wei Wuxian heard the first splatter of water, his steps quickened. He couldn't wait to see the Lotus Lake again. There was a pond in the Imperial Gardens too, of course, but it couldn't compare to the breathtaking lake he remembered visiting with his mother. Rounding a corner behind which he was sure to finally see the lake, in an almost run, he instead crashed into something firm and graciously toppled to the ground. That something, or rather someone, froze and stared down at him. Wei Wuxian groaned and sat up, shaking his head. A pale hand reached out to help him up. Reflexively, he took the hand and let himself be pulled to his feet. He looked up to say something, but the words got stuck in his throat when he looked into the most golden eyes he had ever seen. "This eye color should be illegal," was Wei Wuxian's first thought. His second was that he actually had the power to make that happen. Stupid. It took him a minute to realize the golden-eyed man had spoken to him. "Excuse me, what did you say?" Wei Wuxian asked.
"Do not run. Be mindful of others,"
Goldeye said in a voice that would have put the Imperial Manners teacher to shame. "Eh?" Wei Wuxian asked, confused. The man did not repeat himself, but Wei Wuxian imagined his gaze darkening ever so slightly, though it was hard to tell, since his face was as stoic as his voice. It's a shame that eyes and features this beautiful belong to a face so emotionless, Wei Wuxian thought. I'm sorry," Wei Wuxian tried, as it became apparent that the stranger seemed to wait for some sort of reaction. The man nodded and turned around to continue his way down the street. What a weird guy. He didn't even tell Wei Wuxian his name. Wei Wuxian would have loved to talk to him for a bit. Shaking his head, he brushed the dirt from his robes. He didn't think Niu Huaisong would be thrilled if he returned them sullied, and continued his search. Once again, he didn't get further than the next street corner before his attention was caught by something else. A group of street children, the oldest surely not older than 6 years old, crowded around the steps of a building. The smallest one, he must be younger than 4, sat on the highest steps, a lotus leaf on his head as if it were a crown. A few of the others were holding sticks like swords and wore bags of cloth, which they had obviously fished out of the trash, as armor. The rest were gathered at the foot of the stairs, bowing to the smallest child. "So cute!" Wei Wuxian thought, and settled down to watch them play. They pretended to be in the imperial throne room, and they even let the little one be the emperor. It does look a lot more entertaining in their throne room, though, he thought, after he had watched them play for a while. Surely they wouldn't want to copy it if they knew how boring it actually is. When the 4 children playing guards lifted a board on which the child emperor sat up to their shoulders to carry him around, Wei Wuxian scoffed. He wasn't being carried around like that. He was perfectly capable of walking by himself, which he did. His slight annoyance evaporated instantly, though, when the child started laughing and squealing in delight. The fun was short-lived, though, as a grumpy-looking shop owner swiftly approached the playing children and shoved one of the kids carrying the board. The kid fell, and losing their 4th pillar, the other 3 kids couldn't hold up the board anymore. The little emperor tumbled to the ground and started crying. Wei Wuxian was on his feet before either of the kids had hit the ground, making his way over to the group. He arrived just in time to hear the man tell the kids to go back to the gutter that they had crawled out of and stop shaming the emperor, who surely didn't appreciate some filthy kids mocking him. Wei Wuxian walked up behind him, coughed, and said, "I'm sure the emperor wouldn't mind a few kids playing pretend. There's no offense in that." Walking around the man to crouch down next to the 2 fallen kids, he glared back up again. "I am positive, however, that the emperor wouldn't condone a grown man shoving and insulting innocent children." The man opened his mouth to argue, but Wei Wuxian shot him another dark look, a dangerous glint shining in his eyes. "If you're not going to apologize with your next words, then keep them to yourself and leave." The man turned around, mumbled about the absurdity of apologizing to children, and left. Wei Wuxian huffed and turned back to the children cowering next to him. The oldest had rushed over to hug the crying child emperor and comfort him. "Are you all right?" he asked them, reaching out his hand. The guard kid flinched away from his touch and shot him a wary look.
"They're fine," the oldest boy answered. "Just shocked."
Wei Wuxian nodded and handed the little emperor the lotus leaf he had dropped when he fell. After looking at Wei Wuxian for a moment, the older child said,
"Thank you. Adults usually don't help us."
Wei Wuxian blinked at him, then smiled sadly. "Well, I would always help you if some stupid man is mean to you." The boy returned his smile shakily. The little kid had crawled out of his lap and cautiously tugged at Wei Wuxian's sleeve.
"Will you play with us?"
he asked quietly.
"You can be the head of my guard." "Yes, the powerful warrior that drives all the bad guys away,"
another child chirped in. Wei Wuxian laughed and got to his feet. "I would love to, Your Majesty," he said, and sunk into a deep bow before the little emperor. When he straightened up again, he saw pristine white robes and golden eyes watching them from a few houses down the road. The man from before, Wei Wuxian thought. How long has he been watching? Wei Wuxian raised a hand in greeting and flashed him a smile, only to receive an unwavering face and a turn back in return. How boring, he thought, but was quickly distracted by the oldest of the boys tugging his sleeve.
"Gugu, I'm Yun, and this is Jingyi,"
he said, pointing first to himself and then to the little emperor. The rest of the children gathered around him, also telling him their names, but Wei Wuxian wasn't good with names, so the only other name he managed to remember was that of the guard kid, who was named Zishan. Wei Wuxian only realized he had spent the better part of the afternoon playing with the kids when his stomach started to rumble. He looked up to see the sun already hanging low in the sky and frowned. Yun approached him, having noticed his frown.
"Do you have to go?"
he asked, looking almost a little sad. "I'm afraid so, A-yuan," Wei Wuxian replied, patting the boy on the head. "There's something else I wanted to do today, and I should really go and get myself some food." Being completely focused on the boy before him, he completely missed the pained looks that the rest of the children shot each other.
"Okay,"
Yun replied. "I had a lot of fun playing with you, though," Wei Wuxian assured them. Yuan smiled, and the rest of the kids nodded enthusiastically. "Maybe you better leave, too, just to make sure the man from earlier doesn't find you here again. Maybe get something to eat, too?" Yun frowned at him, but then nodded determinedly.
"We will."
Wei Wuxian grinned and waved at them as he left.